Well, hi, my name is Britt. I'll be the moderator for this special discussion panel celebrating the 2022 Asian representation in books through the Asian Author Alliance. And I just really want to thank them for putting this on. It's going to be exciting. I've heard several of these people before, and you always leave uplifted. So you guys are in for a real treat. This discussion is happening at the end of the yearly observance of Black April, which commemorates the fall of Saigon. This event marked the end of the Vietnam War and is the start of a transition period from the formal reunification of Vietnam into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Let me first introduce our panelists, and then I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Tran lives in New York. Tran graduated from Columbia University with a degree in creative writing and linguistics. She has received fellowships from MacDowell, Art Omai, and Yaddo. House of Sticks is her first book, and it should be noted that Vogue and NPR both noted her book, House of Sticks, as a best book. I think that's amazing. Okay, so now the next is Amy M. Lee. Amy M. Lee was born in Vietnam and immigrated to the United States in 1980 at the age of 5 with her mother and cousin. She is a Vietnam War survivor and congenital heart defect warrior. Her family was among the hundreds of thousands of boat people who fled Vietnam after the fall of Saigon. Amy graduated from Western Washington University with a degree in sociology and worked in the technology and telecommunications sector for 20 years. After her mother's death in February 2017, Amy left her corporate career to write her debut novel, Snow in Vietnam, as a tribute to her mother's heroic decision to flee Vietnam after the fall of Saigon. Today, Amy is a full-time writer living in Oklahoma with her husband and son. She owns Quillhawk Publishing and helps emerging authors indie publish their work. And I will just say, I am one of them. She published my first and we're in the middle of my second. She is the co-founder of the Heart Community Collection, a resource for the congenital heart defect community. Amy also serves as a board member on the Vietnamese Boat People podcast and is an officer for the Oklahoma City Writers Incorporated. And next I have Han Bui. At 8 years old, Han and her family left war-torn Vietnam for safety and a new beginning. After 9 days at sea, they were rescued by the United States Navy. Han will always be grateful for the kindness of her first American helpers. Growing up, she connected with universal themes of family, friendship, and love in the books that she read. However, she didn't see stories about families similar to her own, represented between the pages of these books she read. There weren't any characters she could identify with or who looked like her. Inspired by her first American teacher at a refugee camp, Han grew up to also become a teacher. When her own children's love of books blossomed, Han decided she couldn't find representation in children's literature. Then if she couldn't find it, she would write it herself based on her childhood and Vietnamese heritage. Han has found a publishing home for 2 of her books with Macmillan. The first of the 2 children's picture books is an intergenerational story sparked by her desire to introduce her daughter to a grandmother the daughter never knew. The book will launch in 2023. The second book will be released in 2024 and is inspired by Han's own refugee experience. It was written as a tribute to her grandparents and the teacher who taught her English at the refugee camp. Han's writings have also been featured in Highlights, Next Avenue, and Forbes. Lee Tran is a TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, transformation coach, and author of her memoir, I Did Not Miss the Boat. Her message of diversity and resilience and overcoming trauma has inspired countless people to take action toward change. She is making a bigger impact by encouraging others not to miss their boats. Lee Tran is a war survivor and penniless boat people refugee who went on to graduate from Villanova University, a female scientist turned successful business owner, and now a speaker and a coach. Lee continues to break one glass ceiling after another. She inspires her audience to get out of their old molds so they can rock the boat with their lives with intention and purpose. Okay, so now you guys, yes. So I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed because I just gave a little bit of a backstory about women who battled and beat starvation, battled and beat refugee boats full of hundreds of people and all kinds of things going on there. I know probably all of you, but I certainly know Amy, because we've had many discussions working together. She survived, I mean, goodness, gunfire and stuff from pirate boats, and probably all of you had experience with pirate boats.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna give my little bio. It doesn't really measure up, but here's my bio. Britt, that's me. Britt grew up in Anadarko, Oklahoma, and was a proud member of the girls' basketball and track team. She was active in the United Methodist Church, where her parents were youth group leaders. She received a BS in physical therapy and an MS in health promotion from the University of Oklahoma. Dee discovered a talent for singing and fronted various bands. Songwriting revealed a love for writing, which led to her first book, Fireside, the James Johnson Story, which Amy helped me put out there. Her experience as a physical therapist and her love for elders that she admired while treating them has contributed to the characters and personalities in her book. So there we go. Let's just have some fun talking, you guys. Let me throw this out there. The first question, and each one of you just speak as you feel free to speak. The first question is, what inspired you to become a writer?
Okay, I guess I'll go first.
All right, tell us. I'm anxious.
So when I come to United States, I already turned 17. So I'm the oldest one in the group. Yep. So if you can guess, I came as a teenager in 1980. I think people in my generations tend to clam up. They don't really talk a lot about it. For once, my parents didn't really talk a whole lot, but they didn't have to because I was with them the whole way through. So I have tasted whatever they tasted. And I have the feeling what they have felt. So, but life is hard. So we all move on. The past is the past. You can't really change anything. That's what I thought. Just keep plow on and forge forward to the future. But when you have a story that you're not telling, it's sitting on your back and it's not going to be quiet down. You can't shut it up. And I didn't write because I didn't feel like I'm capable to. I came when I was 17. So language is already a hurdle for me. I already have 3 Chinese dialect that I'm speaking. I read and write Vietnamese. And then I took 4 years of French before I dabbled into English. So it's the 5th, the 6th language that I was so confused. I didn't even know who I was because I was not good in any language. Let's saying that, when you know everything, you know nothing. And the same thing with my heritage, because my family is Chinese. So we are the minority in Vietnam. So there's another layer of onion that need to be peeled. And I just felt like there's so much going on. And until it took my son and my niece asked me about, how come we don't talk a lot about our grandparents and our family history? And it really dawned on me that it's my obligation. I have to write because we're so underrepresented out there. And nobody can tell the story better than the person who's actually lived through it. And if I don't say anything about it, I'm being very selfish. I don't want to take that to the grave with me. I wanted to give it to my children, my niece, my nephew, my son, to know about their heritage. And it turned out that it's benefited a lot of other people, not just the Asian or the refugees or the diaspora community, but also American who read my books. And they say that they really can resonate a lot because that generation get a lot of trauma. And we've been through the culture shock and we've been through so many things. And the reason that I write, because of COVID. I'm a social bee. I'm always outside. So COVID actually helped me speed up, and I was triggered by a lot of PTSD. And I thought that this book gotta go. I have to let it go. And whatever happens, happen. So it was a rough decision going through the period of writing the book. Caused me a lot of pain going back to the time where I wanted to avoid and not being there. So anyway, I'm glad it's out. It has a life of its own. And I'm just here to answer question about the period, about the history, about the culture, about who are actually the refugee people. So I'm glad that that more and more of us feel comfortable enough to let go of our own stories.
Excellent. Yeah, let me just say one little thing, that some of the things you mentioned, because it is your story, all of you, it's your story. And when I went through and I was trying to get a few little things to put in that initial few lines, I realized as I was reading it that it must, because one of the things I learned from Amy when I was in her book study, she said back during the American War, and I was thinking, well, what war was that? And you know, the person who wrote that, I think I got it from Wikipedia. I'm not sure where I got it, but clearly it was not somebody who was that well connected, because they called it the Vietnam War. So I kind of wanted to give that disclaimer when I did that up front, and I missed it. So anyway, I'm backing off. Who wants to talk now?
Well, Lee, I just want to say thank you so much for your eloquent answer. So beautiful. And you are such a powerhouse. I admire you so much. And, you know, I just want everyone to know that Lee and I share the same Chinese heritage. So we're both Teochew people. And I just so wish growing up that I had Lee's book to read so that I could see myself reflected in literature. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that inspired me to become a writer. I came over when I was 3 years old from Vietnam through something known as the Humanitarian Operation, which was a government program that was designed to resettle former prisoners of war here in the States. And my father fit that description. He was a POW for almost 10 years in the re-education camps of Vietnam, and that allowed us to resettle here in New York City. Growing up, it was not the American dream that we were promised, that we so hoped for. It was really difficult, harrowing circumstances. And, you know, poverty was, you know, the backdrop of my childhood. When I was 8 years old, the nurse from school sent me home with a note to my parents saying that, you know, I needed glasses, and they asked my parents to get me glasses. Now, my father, having spent almost a decade in a re-education camp, suffered from PTSD and thought that glasses were a government conspiracy to take away my eyesight. So paranoia being one of the symptoms of PTSD. And I struggled from the age of 8 to 18, not being able to see clearly, not being able to see the board in school. My grades plummeted. And I, you know, one of the subjects that I was able to excel in was English, because I could hold a book up to my eyes and read in that way. But I spent so much time searching for myself in all the books that I read, and I could never find myself. I could never find anyone who looked like me, who had the same experiences as me. And I just remember this one moment in the 9th grade reading The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and reading about the main character, Pecola Breedlove, who's this little Black girl who yearned for a pair of blue eyes because she thought that having these new eyes would increase her value in the gaze of society. And I remember reading this book, and it was the first time that a book had made me cry, because I could finally see myself reflected. Now, my experiences were not the same as Pecola Breedlove's, but I had the same wish. I had the same desire to have a pair of new eyes. And, through those tears, I remember thinking what a powerful feeling it is to be moved by words, and to connect through words. And I thought, oh man, what if one day I could have the power to move people to tears, and I could have the power to make another little girl or another little boy in the world feel seen in that light. And so that's what inspired me to become a writer.
Awesome.
Well, both Lee sisters, I've read both of your books. They're beautiful memoirs, and you do have the power to move, because I was moved to tears when I read both memoirs. So thank you for sharing the gift of your storytelling. As for me, I didn't know I wanted to become a writer until my mom passed away. That was really the catalyst for me to figure out how I was going to honor her and how I was going to move on without her, right? So it became a therapeutic thing. Here I go. Because my mom passed away, I didn't have anybody to talk to about my heritage and my history. So I took the approach of writing a historical fiction, which is more of a biographical fiction of my mom's story versus a memoir about my life or about anybody that I really had close contact with. The other thing is I came here when I was 5 years old as a boat refugee, boat people, and was really straddling the American divide and the Vietnamese divide, right? And I didn't know who I was really. And becoming a writer, just getting that first book out really helped me to understand my history, what my mom went through, what millions of people went through after the war ended. And when I wrote that first book, I honestly thought that was it, done. I'm going to go back to collecting my paycheck and working crazy hours at corporate America. But thanks to you all and my readers out there, they really wanted to know what happened to snow, and so hence snow in Seattle. And I tell you, it just keeps going from there. If you have that story within you, like our first Lee said, like, you've got to get it out. Otherwise it's an anchor, and you got to get that monkey off your back. And so if anybody who's thinking about writing a book or sharing their stories, just do it. You've got a huge community there to support you.
Great.
I just want to say that I'm so glad to be journeying with all of you, because you really helped me feel validated as far as my experiences. We support each other on this journey, and I think that's the greatest blessing, is that we have found our literary sisters on this journey. What inspired me to become a writer was I felt a responsibility to share our stories. A couple years ago, I started writing my first story because my children, I really wanted to show them a better world than what we were seeing right now. And they were very confused about the way that immigrants were portrayed. And I felt a responsibility to share my experiences because even though, like you've all shared, it was challenging and the harrowing experiences, there were also goodness. Try to remember the goodness. I want to show positive representation. And that's why I decided to write children's books, even when the world is divided, the way that immigrants are portrayed, or how unkind things may seem, especially with Asian hate. I want to show my children that there was a time when there was goodness, and I wanted to share that in my stories. I wanted to write stories that show the goodness that was shown to me and millions of people. That's what inspired me to write, because I don't want my kids to not know about those experiences or other children to not know that.
I knew this was going to be good. Here we go with the next question, okay? The next question, do you find it challenging for your children who are born here to stay connected with their Vietnamese heritage? Who wants to kick that off?
Well, I don't think Lee can answer you that because
okay.
But this Lee can, because
right.
Take it. I have a child who is 27 years old, and obviously he knows that where we came from, but he has no idea the depth of the trauma that we have been through. And on top of the refugee or the chaotic from running away from the country and the struggle between the society and the culture, and there's another dynamic inside the house that is really, I don't even know how to put it to word, because they are so messed up that I can say that mental health is totally from top to bottom. My youngest brother, when he came to America, he's 3, and I was 17. So we're 14 years apart. But you guess what? Our pain is so similar. We might see through life in a different lens. He's much more eloquent in English. He's got more years to adapt into the American society, but it doesn't make him any less pain than I was. Now, when we go to a next generation, it's a different story, because my son was born here in the United States. He had a comfortable life. He never know what sleeping out in the jungle means. I mean, to him, camping is fun. To his mom, camping is torture. So that's a different story. But until I wrote my book and he read the book and his jaw just getting lower and lower, is totally dropped. He's like, I have no idea what that's what. And he figured out why I behave the way I do. Just like when I'm writing the book, I figured out why the way my parents behave the way they do or they did. So when you put yourself into the shoes of your parents, you actually understand them and have compassion and love them. And so is my son. He read the book and now he's like, oh, okay, now I understand why you keep, hoover around me and make me practice pianos and do homework and this and that. Why you're so uptight and you all this and that. So I think the beautiful things about your kid read your story, they know in depth. And my son wanted to do a podcast with me, which we did for 10 episodes, so he can ask all the questions he want to ask. And I think that is the biggest gratifying things about me with my book, because now I'm actually open the door for dialogue with my younger generation. And I was hoping that having a podcast out there would trigger a lot of younger people start having dialogue to their parents, their children, about the journey that they came. And I'm sure my son bears some sort of suffering for being different from his classmates. But that suffering is, I don't want to compare, but it's a whole lot less and different than what we suffering through. So, so that's what I'm hoping. Other people will also open a dialogue with their parents and their children.
Well, I have a brand new 13-year-old in my household. He's Amerasian, so he's half Vietnamese, half Swedish mix. And he's been to Vietnam twice. He loves my Vietnamese food cooking. And, I do certain traditions that I have learned from my mom, just from observing her when she was alive, like the ancestor worship and lighting the incense and celebrating certain milestones or holidays. And to be honest, I'm kind of just winging it, because I came here when I was 5 years old, and I'm considered the 1.5 generation. And when you're young, you don't really pay attention to what your parents are doing. Everybody's got their own agenda. And it's not until after they're gone that you start to realize, oh, wait, I think I'm supposed to do something here. And so, but it's okay. I think as long as we strive to understand and we try to immerse ourselves as much as possible into that culture, even though our language skills aren't as good, because I can't speak Vietnamese very well to my family back home. You know, it's just random gestures, and I don't even know if they understand what I'm saying, but we try. And Preston, I know he's very proud to be Vietnamese. That's the one side of him that I think he really identifies with, and it's just because I keep at it. You know, I even sometimes will like I'll show videos, random videos of the Vietnamese culture, and he thinks it's kind of weird or whatever, but then we have a talk about it, you know, and then it helps to educate. So my point is, you know, it doesn't matter how much you know or how little you know. The fact is you keep trying and keep pushing it, and you immerse yourself in it together, and you make new traditions too. So
yeah, I agree, Amy. It's the connection, being able to share with your children. I love that I can share the memories that I have of both of their grandmothers. My grandmother, which would have been their great grandmother, I can share stories about her. They get to know them through our stories. So I think that's why it's so powerful to be able to share with our children our stories, because it allows them to have a window into our experiences, but also to see themselves. So,
yeah. And New York, Lee, I know that you don't have children, honey, but you know, you have an amazing boyfriend, and you've been involved in a very young life who's grown up to be a big man now, really. I was kind of curious to know how you touch him with your Vietnamese heritage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he loves the fact that, you know, I share Vietnamese culture with him all the time. Every time I tell him a story about, you know, back home in Vietnam or anything having to do with Vietnamese food or even family stories, he's just captivated. And I love that. He's Dominican and Jamaican, which is,
wow.
you know, yeah. But I love that I can share my culture with somebody who's so different from me, and that he loves it. And he's 19 now. But it is difficult to, especially for Vietnamese children who are born here. I mean, like you, Amy, I came here when I was 3, a little younger than you. And, you know, I had to really work at learning the language. I had to really work at speaking, and that came through when I was really young, and my mom would sit me down and teach me. But, you know, my brothers don't know how to write in Vietnamese as well as I do. And I think it's because there is this sort of, when you're trying to assimilate into another culture, there is a sacrifice that you have to make sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that makes it increasingly difficult for the younger generation to, you know, stay connected to their heritage. But I think through our stories, we can help we can help them stay connected. If I do decide to have children, I think having this memoir out and continuing to write more stories celebrating Vietnamese culture, that I'll be able to pass down, you know, my heritage and my legacy in that way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lee, I want to say that you're passing your legacy to many Asian American children and actually you're allowing us to see ourselves in your story. So we're so glad you wrote it.
Oh, thank you. Said.
It's a wonderful book.
Oh,
it is.
I'm gonna cry.
I know. I read it twice and listened to the audiobook, and I cried all 3 times. Darn it.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on. What do you hope to achieve with your stories? I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but not exclusively. So if anybody has something to add to that, let's see what you have to say.
Who want to go first this time?
I would like Asian American kids to be able to see themselves in books, because growing up, I didn't see myself in the book as a main character. But I also would like all my readers to be able to experience the Vietnamese culture. I'm excited for kids to learn more about our traditions. I think that's going to help the kids to really be able to connect with our stories. I really wanted kids to know more about through our refugee experience, because they only get to see what's in the news or social media or hear from the adults around them, but I would like them to be able to also hear it from the people who experienced it. They have the biggest hearts and they're so compassionate, and I hope that the stories will inspire that kindness.
For me, I just want to break down barriers. You know, I was on a show one time, and one of the things that the hostess said was that books make you listen. You know, it's just you in the book, and I wholeheartedly, that resonates with me. And I feel like the more you read, the more you can really understand. And by being relatable, you can have that empathy, that compassion. You can be inspired. You can understand perseverance. And, you know, as we all know, with Asian hate thing going on for over 2 years now, and it's not stopping anytime soon, it is now our job, our responsibility to speak up. And if we are introverts or we have a small platform or whatever it is, you know, books is one way for us, storytelling is one way for us to speak up. And that's what I hope my stories achieve, is that people will actually listen and understand.
You know, let me just add, I'm not on the panel, but connecting first with Amy. Through Amy, I've even with Han, but I've been on Zooms with both Lees and Amy in person, and I will tell you that the way that you guys speak truth, it's obvious that it's truth. It's obvious that it's heartfelt, and I really, you know, I don't know, I'm no authority on this, but I do know with most people are afraid of and maybe even hate things they don't understand. But the more they understand it, the more they open up little cracks and they're maybe willing to listen. But unless they see truth and unless they have people tell their story,
yes,
you know, they're going to believe what they've always believed, because somebody else who doesn't even know the situation has told them something different. And so I think your story is huge for those other people who are Asian, Vietnamese, or the associated folks, but it may be ultimately even bigger. We need to get your stories on the national, like in movies. We got to get your stories in big books and get them on the talk shows. I mean, every single one of you guys would really shine on a talk show. And we got to get,
I think you're totally right, Dee. I think that's a lot of time. I think my purpose is to get people to talk. Now, writing is dreadful to me. That's why I went with science, because coming here much older, writing, and I didn't have a lot of time to read or write at my leisure, because at the time I'm the oldest. I have to help a lot of my family, so a lot have falling on me. So memorizing formulas and solving problems is actually a lot easier for me than writing book and check dictionaries and trying to see what it means in English and in Vietnamese and in Chinese and in, you know, like it was a puzzle for me. So I never thought I could be a writer or a speaker or anything, because I was so afraid to talk, particularly talking to my father, because he's the major authority in the house and he's very disciplinary, and he is not like let you freely express yourself, whatever you want to say, you know. So I never thought about being a writer or a speaker. Writing, it was forceful. I had to do it because I just need to get it out. So speaking is where I'm pursuing. And I think I have a better craft than speaking. And I think because I think the microphone is very powerful in a sense that for me, it's easier and I can impact other women, empower them to actually dig deep inside them and get through the trauma that they've gone. Don't stop there and hold your cannonball of ulcer and just stay there, because we do have a choice to move forward, but we have to make a decision. And that's what I want to do. I want to speak to anyone to tell them that they're worth it. They're not worthless. Like, you know, our parents sometimes tell us, you know, you're stupid, you're worthless. And those, a lot of harsh language in the society in the place that women are like yay big, and you can never get cross the line that even a petite man is holding so much more power than a giant woman. It just the society in that era. And when I open up, oh my God, I have heard people in United States in the same era saying the same thing, going through the same thoughts. So we're not alone. And that's the reason I want to inspire people. If this little Asian refugee girls can actually hold a microphone, anybody can talk. Anybody can tell their story. So that is my desire. I'm hoping that I can actually make some impact in that area and be free. When I'm die, I just want to die empty. I don't want to take anything with me.
Well said.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, Lee, you have such a gift. I could listen to you all day. Oh. You're so inspirational. And thank you to all you ladies for articulating so beautifully some of my deepest desires when it comes to sharing my stories and the impact that I hope it has on others. And I would just like to add that one of my goals is also to alleviate, and maybe this is a bit of a tall order, but to eliminate some of the loneliness in the world. I think loneliness is such a disease, and it divides us, it kills us. And I think through sharing my stories, I hope that people will feel connected to another human being, and not just on the basis of our skin color or the basis of, where we were born, but just the shared humanity that connects us all. And so I hope that, yes, my stories are Vietnamese, but underneath it, it is also the story of being human and being flawed and also being incredible, and a testament to the human spirit.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Awesome. All righty. So, and this we have another segue. This is kind of off the heels of the last question. What's one tip you have to encourage people to share their stories, especially if their stories are traumatic?
I'll go up because I'm writing this book called The Copper Phoenix, and it's about surviving sexual assault and childhood abuse. And I've been reading a lot of trauma books. And one of the biggest things that resonated with me actually came from Oprah. And Oprah said, the question that we need to ask is not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And that opens up the dialogue, and that starts to talk about, that helps you to heal. And you don't start to think, okay, well, something's wrong with me. Like I'm acting the way I'm acting, or because, this terrible thing happened to me, this is just the way I am. And so my point is, when we start talking to people who've been through something traumatic, that's what we should be asking them, is what happened to you? So that's my little.
I think everybody has a computer. I'm just going to use that analogy. Every now and then you need to defragment your computer. Everyone come with a defragmented life. There's things that we don't understand. There's things that we had no idea. For me, writing a book is going back in time and defragmented my life and search out what's the reason of the things that we did in the refugee camp. What's the reason why my parents did certain things that I didn't understand. So it's like, you putting back the puzzle together. And to understand, then you can love, because you can't love without understanding them. And for many years, I struggle and I hold grudges. And just like my parents hold grudges against their own parents, their own siblings. And if we don't defragment that, we're going to come out fragmented forever. And there's a quote I use in my book from Ashley Judge saying that trauma, not transform, is trauma transfer. And I was so dumbfounded by that. And I was like, if I'm not transforming right now, chances I'm passing on to my next generation. Mm-hmm. And to do all the defragmentation, I learned that I love my parents so much. I want to glorify my dad, who have done so much for us. I mean, like Amy honoring her mother, I totally worship the ground that my dad walked on, but he's the reason that I feel this big all the time too, because he come from a line of trauma. He didn't know any better. But when he died, I felt like my Chinese foundation have crumbling, because he was the one who holding that proud Chinese heritage. And I felt like, I don't have him to ask about my own background. So I want people with mixed heritage or with identity problem that who come here, and people who have born in one country, but they're not that citizens, and people, America got plenty of that, I'm sure. I want them to know that the identity is their own. Whatever come with it is beautiful. Whatever that they can keep is beautiful. And the tip is you need to go back to defragment it by understand your roots, so you can actually grow the tree and grow better. Because, if we don't go back and solve those problems, we're not able to be fruitful in the long term. And I think my son have appreciated that very much, all the work that I've gone through. Now he's proud that he can always go back to the book and tell it to his children in the future, or even just, know about the history is valuable. And I say that if you have a story to tell, do it. Do it. It's so, your life is an open book, but you know what? When you're true to yourself, you speak your voice, you're true to yourself, you don't have anything to be afraid. It is an open book. So what? Just do it.
Awesome.
I just want to say again, so well said. Really resonates with me, especially your point with regard to understanding and love. I believe the late Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh said that understanding is love's other name. And I think in writing our stories and sharing our stories, it's all in the spirit of increasing our collective understanding of one another and of ourselves. In terms of what tip I would give to someone who has experienced a traumatic event and wish to tell their story, one thing I notice about trauma and the way that it's manifested within our stories is that oftentimes there's this tendency to view the world in black and white. And sometimes it's easier that way, and it's comforting. But I think to really make it effective and for it to reach others, we have to celebrate the nuance of our humanity, the complexity of our humanity, and celebrate the fact that we're all flawed, and we're all capable of extreme violence, but also extreme kindness, and to really celebrate that duality within our stories.
I think that a tip that I would give about writing more challenging topics or something that you've been through that's really hard is to be kind to yourself and be patient with yourself as well. I find that it's easier sometimes to, like Lee said, to not have it be black or white, but embrace all of the different colors of your story. And I think that's also important to pick a small part of it and not look at the whole picture, because it can be overwhelming. So a lot of times if I have to write something difficult, I'll think about a small part of it, but I also will allow myself to feel not just the hard things, but also remember the goodness. And I think that helps me to have that balance, so I don't feel so overwhelmed when I'm deep into writing something that's harder. I might think about my grandparents' love and their storytelling, or I might think about traditions that we did together. Then it kind of gives me that almost like a mental break and allows me to know that both things can be true. I think a very important thing is to let go of the shame and surround yourself with positivity and surround yourself with good people, because I think that makes all the difference when you can be seen by people that know your heart.
I'm telling you, everybody needs to watch this. I mean, the truth that you guys are speaking, it's amazing. So this next question is, what are your thoughts of writing stories in which the protagonist is another ethnicity different from your own?
I think Amy can answer that one best.
If the protagonist is different than your own, this is where a good sensitivity reader comes into play. Mm-hmm. This is also, as long as you've lived that culture's life, you can speak to it, and you can be authentic about it. I could be Vietnamese and write maybe my protagonist is Chinese or Hispanic, as long as I have that experience that my character is going through from a cultural perspective, from historical perspective. And again, like that's where you need your beta readers and your sensitivity readers, and really honor that protagonist's heritage and culture. So I think it's possible, but obviously tread carefully.
Well, you don't have to ask me because I'm not intent to write anybody else's story. Hard enough to write my own, and I like to read about other people's story, but not in this lifetime. No.
Never say never.
I can say this one. I think I put a stake on the ground. This one, no.
I feel like people can write outside of their culture and their experience as long as they do the research and have sensitivity readers. I think that's really, really important. And I also think it's important for us to be a sensitivity reader for someone else who's writing about our experiences, because I've had people approach me about that, and I'm honored for them to share our stories as long as they do the research and they ask and they want to know more.
Well,
I absolutely agree.
Say your stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I think the best writers write what they know, right? Because it can really embody those experiences. And it comes across really inauthentic when you try to step outside of your own experiences without having done proper research. And it shows. So maybe the question is, can you, but it's rather, can you do it effectively? And yeah, to do your research and stick to what you know, because that'll make for a much more, just a better story overall.
Right. This is relatable, but it's kind of funny, relating to what we just talked about. A good friend of mine was interested in the Underground Railroad, nothing to do with Asian culture, but had a true interest in this. So there was a book about the Underground Railroad. She got it and she started reading it, and it became very apparent they had done no research, because they thought it was a real railroad in the book. It was a railroad that was underground. And so just an exclamation point that do your research, people.
I'm sure every good book out there, but just like anything, you got to be selective what you read too. So it's not just the author. Anybody can feel free to write anything, but sure, you as the reader have responsibility to choose what you read and promote the good writing. And
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that was funny.
100% yes.
You guys, I can't tell you how much of an inspiration you are. And I can tell you this, I have, from each one of you, and I just met you tonight, Han, but what a sweet spirit you are.
Oh, thank you.
Such kindness just ooze out of your pores. I mean, I've learned something from every single one of you, and I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to be involved. You guys promised me you won't quit. You got to keep pressing. You got to keep pressing. And
well, maybe we can talk a little bit about what's going on next, because I know Lee in New York has a book that she's working on.
Yeah.
Would you like to share with us, Lee?
Please.
Sure. I mean, so I wrote, my first book was a memoir, and as much as I loved writing that, I thought it was, time for me to make my foray into fiction. So my second book will be a historical novel. And it's based on these two real life people known as the Tran sisters, which I'm sure you all know about. This is in 40 AD, after centuries of Chinese domination. These two Vietnamese sisters join the Vietnamese army and they become generals. And together they lead the first successful revolt against the Chinese Imperial Army. They take back Vietnam's independence and they reign as the first queens of Vietnam from 40 to 43 AD. And, every time I ask anybody if they've ever heard of the Trung sisters, people say, who is that?
It's the biggest thing in Vietnam. Everybody have to read through that pair of sisters.
I can't wait.
Exactly. Yes. There are streets in Vietnam named after them. There's a festival every year. It's an incredible story, and it's true. And I just would love to shed light on this really powerful moment in history and feminists. I mean, before their time, this is 40 AD, who would have thought that two sisters could.
You know what the funny thing is, Lee? You take a Chinese descent to write that story.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm really trying to use that to my advantage,
Oh my goodness. You've got your work cut out for you, because that's not going to be an easy story to write as a historical fiction, right? But I'm so excited.
We can't wait to read it.
Oh, we used to watch movie on those two sisters. Oh my God, there's so many Vietnamese opera on those movie, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Lots of great tactic. You don't think Washington is the only one who has tactic.
Oh, definitely.
I was gonna ask Dee what you're working on, Dee.
Oh, this is about you guys.
No, we want to know.
We want to know. Amy is publishing my next novel, and
very exciting.
Fireside, the West Lion story, and Fireside is an assisted living center that has some really cool characters in there. I mean, I am very attached to these characters, and so one of the characters is Wes Lyons. He comes there. He's a celebrity televangelist that has spiraled into a dismal state after the death of his son. And he goes to Fireside and meets all these characters. And it's all about him trying to regain his life because, I mean, he's
cool.
thrown it into the gutter.
That's cool.
And so anyway, it's got a feisty nurse, Ginger, who covers up her tattoos and smokes on her break, covers up her tattoos with a lab coat. And all the residents, they just love her because she takes up for them. So anyway, that's what my life is. I'm a physical therapist, and I live that life every day. And some of these elders, they've just taught me so much. So that's what I'm about. And hopefully it'll be ready by the end of the year with Amy's help.
Do it. We'll do it.
I can't wait.
And Lee's doing an audiobook of your memoir, which I can't wait. When is that going to be done?
Hopefully by the end of the month.
Really?
Wow.
Well, for me recording, but I'm not sure when it will be done after editing. That's another thing. So this morning is funny. I was reading chapter 12, and I was like sobbing because was my last year of high school, and there's a lot of chaotic things in the house. And then after the chapter, and I was trying to play back, I was like, wow, the sound's kind of muffled. And I look back, my microphone, the good one, is out here because I was having a speech contest on the weekend. So now I have to go back and reread everything. But it was kind of good because the first time I read this morning, I was sobbing and I couldn't clear out my throats, and so it's a good way to redo it. But my second book's supposed to be out this year, which I haven't started yet. I'm putting it back because I don't want to go through childbirth another time unless I have a chance to show off my baby. And I'm taking my baby to the road this year, and then I'll worry about pregnant and give birth to the next book later.
Oh my goodness. Well, hurry up, woman. I can't wait to read it.
Pace yourself. You're a lot younger. You'll be around.
Anybody else working on anything else?
Dee, I want to say thank you so much for being the moderator, and we have a lot of fun. I think this is one of the chances that Amy created for us to be partner with the Asian Author Alliances to kind of like showcase our stories. Hopefully that more people will have courage to do theirs too, because I know that we all come from lines and lines of stories, and this is what we got out of it, friendships. But it is so nice to be able to see more of us, and I'm so proud. I have to say, I am much older than this bunch here. I feel so good to see the younger generation who are pick up the pen and the paper and make our story powerful, because we need collective voice. One of us would not make a dent, but all together, we're going to blow up.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for allowing me to be a part of this with you. And I look forward to celebrating, you know, our culture and our history, our heritage. I look forward to full steam ahead with AAPI Heritage Month. And again, thank you, Dee, and thank you to Asian Author Alliance for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think April 30th is the worst day, but also I want to thank for that day so we can have today like now, you know. So thank you again to everyone.
Thank you. Such an honor to share space with you all.